Greetings, travellers. I am Swifto, and this is probably going to be the last part of my story time with Swifto, which is I. And it's not been a very successful series so far. Got the camera out again, just so that people can see my ugly face. Hi. And we are going to continue, as the title suggests, with some more Brothers Grimm. And yeah, like I say, this will probably be the last part. I've done 3 of these now, or is it 4? Yeah, this will be the 4th actually, now that I think about it, because I forgot I'd done the Halloween one, which I didn't actually stream. I recorded that as a video, which was great. So, just take a wee moment to breathe here, because I'm not used to streaming, and especially with my face on the camera, it's quite nerve-wracking actually. I have a cup of mint tea, just to keep my mouth nice and refreshed, because I'll probably dry out halfway through the video, as you do when you're reading aloud. Hope I didn't spike too much. I should probably put the microphone on a different table from the one that I put the mug on, but that would be like something a professional streamer would do. I'm not professional in any way in the slightest, and I'm not sure if it's going to come up on the stream, but the way it looks here, my camera seems to be recording in a different format. It's not widescreen. Don't know why that is. Maybe it is widescreen, but I can't tell until I see the video playback. The VOD. What does VOD stand for? I don't know. Anyway. Oh, that did. That went bright red there. I do apologise if that hurt anyone's ears. Not that anyone's listening, but we'll just continue with Brothers Grimm for now. And if no one shows up this time, I think this will probably be the last story time with Swifto, because in retrospect I realised probably not a good idea. I just thought we could have some fun with it, reading some silly and, more importantly, public domain stories, and just have a bit of a laugh with it. Obviously I will not be taking it very seriously, and I will take the piss whenever possible, so keep that in mind. So I'll just move the wee thing out the way. And previously we've read about a lot of really stupid peasants, giants. This story about the nail, the horse, basically the guy was an arsehole. We read a brilliant little story about domestic abuse, which that was something. I don't really think you should be reading that to children. I'm not entirely sure if this was originally intended for children, but obviously when you think Brothers Grimm, fairy tales in general, you think of stories for children. So having a story that was basically about domestic abuse was kind of weird. And I think it gets a lot worse later on. I have flicked through, and there are some questionable stories in here which I don't think I'll be reading. Well, I probably won't go into it anyway, because what was that click? I don't know. I'll just begin, shall I? And this is Thumb, which is a story I think I've heard of, but I have no idea what it's about, so we'll just start. There once was a poor peasant. Another one. Are all these stories going to be about peasants or really awful people? I don't know. But anyway, there once was a peasant who sat in the evening by the hearth and poked the fire with his wife, and his wife sat and span. Like spin? Is that what she did? She just sat and span while he poked the fire. Jolly good then. Then he said, "How sad is it that we have no children? With us all is so quiet, and in other houses it is noisy and lively." "Yes," replied the wife, and sighed. "It's a shame you're impotent. Even if we had only one, and it were quite small, and only as big as a thumb, think I see where this story's going. I should be quite satisfied, and we would still love it with all our hearts. Referring to a child as it once again, which is a bit weird. I guess that's just times change, the way people talk change and stuff. Now it so happened that the woman fell ill, and after 7 months gave birth to a child. I suppose that's 7 months actually. Is it not supposed to be 9 months? Not that I would know, but gave birth to a child that was perfect in all its limbs, but no longer than a thumb. Then they said, it is as if we wished it to be, and it shall be our dear child, because of its size, we will call it Tom Thumb. They did not let it want food, but the child did not grow taller, but remained as it had been at the first. Nevertheless, it looked sensibly to our eyes, and soon showed itself to be wise and a nimble creature, for everything it did turned out well. Keep looking away from the page, and then I lose my page. The place. That's what it says. One day the peasant was getting ready to go out into the forest to cut wood, when he said to himself, "How I wish that there was anyone who would bring the cart to me." "Oh, father," cried Tom, "I will soon bring the cart. Rely on that. It shall be in the forest at the appointed time." Bit weird that a child talks like that, but okay. The man smiled and said, "How can that be done? You're fucking tiny as shit, man. Thou art far too small to lead the horses by the reins." "That is of no consequence, father. If my mother will only harness it, I shall sit in the horse's ear and call out to him how he is to go." "Well," answered the man, because we were too lazy to give him a name, "for once we will try it." When the time came, the mother harnessed the horse and placed Tom Thumb in its ear. And then the little creature cried, "Gee up, gee up." Then it went quite properly, as if with the master, and the cart went right way into the forest. I do apologise, I can't read. It so happened that as he was turning a corner, and the little one was crying, "Gee up," 2 strange men came towards him. "My word," said one of them, "what is this? There is a cart coming, and a driver is calling to the horse, but he is not to be seen." "That can't be right," said the other. "We will follow the cart and see where it stops." The cart, however, drove right into the forest and crashed into a tree and exploded for some reason, because Michael Bay film now, I've decided. Actually, forget that. And exactly to the place where the wood had been cut. When Tom Thumb saw his father, he cried to him, "Cease thou, father, I am here with the cart. Now take me down to the place where I belong." The father got hold of the horse with his left hand, and with the right took his little son out of the ear. Tom Thumb sat down quite merrily on the straw, but when the 2 strange men saw him, they did not know what to say for astonishment. Then one of them took the other side and said, "Hark, little fellow would make our fortune if we exhibit him in a large town for money. We will buy him." They went to the peasant and said, "Sell us the little man. He shall be well treated with us." "No," replied the father, "he is the apple of my eye, and all the money in the world cannot buy him from me." Tom Thumb, however, when he heard of the bargain, had crept up to the folds of his father's coat, placed himself on his shoulder, and whispered in his ear, "Father, do give me away. I will soon come back again." Then his father parted with him to the two men for a handsome bit of money. "Where wilt thou sit?" they said to him. "Oh, just set me on the rim of your hat, and then I can walk backwards and forwards and look at the country and still not fall down." Just gonna take a wee sip here. Everyone enjoying the story? Fantastic, isn't it? Where are we? They did as he wished, and when Tom Thumb had taken leave of his father, they went away with him. They walked until it was dusk, and then the little fellow said, "Do take me down. I want to come down." The man took his hat off and put the little fellow on the ground by the wayside, and he leapt and crept about a little between the sods, and then he suddenly slipped into a mouse hole which he had sought out. "Good evening, gentlemen. Just go home without me," he cried to them and mocked them. They ran thither and struck their sticks into the mouse hole, but it was all a lost labour. Tom Thumb crept still further in, and as he soon became I knew I was going to mess that up. And as soon as it became quite dark, they were forced to go home with their vexation and their empty purses. When Tom Thumb saw that they were gone, he crept back out of the subterranean passage. I read that wrong. It is still so dangerous to walk on the ground in the dark, he said. How easily a neck or a leg is broken. Fortunately, he knocked against an empty snail shell. "Thank God," he said, "and that I can pass the night safely," and got into it. Not long afterwards, when he was just going to sleep, he heard two men go by, and one of them was saying, How shall we contrive," turn the page, "to get hold of the rich pastor's silver and gold?" And I should say there is a picture here of the little fellow himself, and judging by the size of him on this picture, I don't think he'd really fit into a snail shell, unless it was a particularly large snail. But there he is in all his glory, and we shall just continue with the story now, because that is what you do when you read a story. I could tell thee that, cried Tom Thumb, interrupting. "What was that?" said one of the thieves in fright. "I heard someone speak." They stood still and listened, and Tom Thumb spoke again and said, "Take me with you, and I'll help you. But where art thou? Just look on the ground and observe from whence my voice comes," he replied. The thieves... Just a quick question. How did they get close from him? I suppose they could have just made them for himself. But, yeah. Brings up a whole load of questions when he's that small. Like borrower size, I guess. Would his stomach, be able to break down food the same way that normal human beings do because it's so small? Don't know. There the thieves at length found him and lifted him up. "Thou little imp, how wilt thou help us?" they said. "A great deal," he said. "I will creep into the pastor's room through the iron bars and will reach you out whatever you want to have. Come then," they said, "and we will see what thou can do." When they got to the pastor's house, Tom Thumb crept into the room, but instantly cried out with all his might, "Do you want to have everything that is here?" The thieves were alarmed and said, "But do speak softly, as we do not want to wake anyone." Another thing, with him being so small, would he be able to shout that loudly? Don't know. Suppose there's no real way of knowing. Well, there might be. Do some scientific tests. But I'm too stupid for that. When they got to the pastor's house, Tom Thumb crept into the room. Oh, I've just read that there. Fuck's sake. Tom Thumb, however, behaved as if he had not understood this and cried out again, "What do you want? Do you want to have everything that is here?" The cook, who slept in the next room, heard this and sat up in bed and listened. The thieves, however, had, in their fright, run some distance away, but at last they took the courage and thought, "The little rascal wants to mock us." They came back and whispered to him, "Come, be serious and reach something out to us." Then Tom Thumb cried again as loudly as he could, "I really will give you everything. Just put your hands in." The maid, who was listening, heard this quite distinctly and jumped out of bed and rushed to the door. The thieves took flight and ran as if the wild huntsmen were behind them. But as the maid could not see anything, she went to strike a light. When she came back to the place with it, Tom Thumb, unperceived, betook himself to the granary. Can't say that. The granary. I know what I'm saying. Shut up. And the maid, after she had examined every corner, found nothing. Lay down in her bed again and believed that, after all, she had only been dreaming, with her eyes open and ears. With open eyes and ears. Damn my dyslexicness. Tom Thumb climbed up among the hay and found a beautiful place to sleep in. There he intended to rest until the day, and then got home again to his parents. Really? It's pretty quick. But as he had other things to go through... Oh, I see, he hasn't got there yet. I'm such an idiot. Truly, there is much affliction and misery in this world. That's very true. That's the truest thing I've read in this book so far. When the day dawned, the maid arose from her bed to feed the cows. Her first walk was into the barn, where she laid hold of an armful of hay, and precisely that very one which poor Tom Thumb was lying in. What a pillock. He, however, was sleeping so soundly that he was aware of nothing and did not awake until he was in the mouth of the cow, who had picked him up with the hay. Ah, heavens! Ah, heavens! I've been eaten by a cow. He cried, "How have I got into this filling mill?" But he soon discovered where he was. Ow. My eye. Then it was necessary to be careful not to let himself go between the teeth and be dismembered, but he was nevertheless forced to slip down into the stomach with the hay, and probably died either from the acid or suffocation. But okay, we'll just continue. Maybe it's like the Sarlacc pit, and he was somehow able to escape with a jetpack or something, I don't know. Like Boba Fett, that's what I'm getting at. But he was nevertheless forced to... In this little room, the windows are forgotten, he said, and no sun shines, and neither will a candle be brought. His quarters were especially unpleasant to him. Inside a stomach, I should fucking think so, aye. And the worst was, more and more the hay was coming in by the door. I'm great at reading. And the space grew less and less. Did you know that stomachs have two cows? There's a fun fact for you. Then at length, in his anguish, he cried as loud as he could, "Bring me no more fodder, bring me no more fodder." The maid was just milking the cow. I'm not sure I like where this is going. And when she heard someone speaking, and saw no one, she perceived that it was the same voice she had heard in the night. She was so terrified that she slipped off her stool and spilled the milk. She ran in great haste to her master and said, "Oh heavens, pastor, the cow has been speaking." "Thou art mad," replied the pastor, but he went himself to the brae to see what was there. Hardly, however, had he set foot inside when Tom Thumb cried again, "Bring me no fodder, bring me no fodder." Then the pastor himself was alarmed, and thought that an evil spirit had gone into the cow, and ordered her to be killed. She was killed, but the stomach in which Tom Thumb was in was thrown onto the midden. Tom Thumb had great difficulty in working his way. However, he succeeded so far as to get some room, but just as he was going to thrust his head out, a new misfortune occurred. A hungry wolf ran thither and swallowed the whole stomach in one gulp. Fucking hell. I have actually seen dogs, not wolves, but dogs do a similar thing. Where they just swallow it in one gulp. That's crazy. Tom Thumb did not lose courage. Perhaps he thought, the wolf will listen to what I have to say, because apparently he was a pillock. And he called to him from out of his stomach, "Dear wolf, I know of a magnificent feast for thee." And the wolf, of course, replied, because it's a fairy tale, "Where is it to be had?" said the wolf, in perfect English, or German, as I imagine this would have originally been. In such and such a house that thou must creep into through the kitchen sink, and will find cakes and bacon and sausages, and as much of them as thou can eat. He had described to him exactly his father's house. It's not exactly a great description of a house, is it? It's full of cakes, bacon, sausages, and it's got a kitchen sink. Okay, that could describe a lot of houses. The wolf did not request to be told this twice, and squeezed himself in at the night through the sink, and ate to his heart's content in the larder. How would you get a wolf through a sink? Maybe they had different kinds of sink back then. What's that say? He had eaten his fill. He wanted to go out again, but he had to become so big that he could not go out by the same way. Tom Thumb had reckoned on this, and now began to make a violent noise on the wolf's body, and raged and screamed as loudly as he could. "Wilt thou be quiet?" said the wolf. "Thou wilt wake up the people." So in all of this sentient wolf never questioned the fact that he had a voice in his stomach. What a stupid, intelligent wolf. "Eh, what?" replied the little fellow. "Thou hast eaten thy fill, and I will make merry likewise." And began once more to scream with all his strength. And he began to scream with all his strength. Right. I read that wrong, I do apologise. At last his father and mother were aroused by it, and ran to the room to look in through the opening of the door. And I'm just going to go into a funny sort of voice now, for some reason. When they saw that the wolf was inside, they ran in, and the husband fetched his axe, and the wife the scythe. The wife the scythe. "Stay behind," said the man, when they entered the room. When they had given him a blow, he was quite satisfied, and went on his merry way. No, that's not what happened. When he gave him a blow, if he is not killed by it, thou must cut him down, and he hew his body pieces. Then Tom Thumb heard his parents' voice and cried, "Dear father, I am here. I am in the wolf's body." Said the father, full of joy, "Thank God, our dear child has found us again," and bade the woman to take her scythe, that Tom Thumb might not be hurt with it. Take away her scythe. I'm making all the mistakes tonight. I keep missing out words. Does that ever happen to you when you're reading something and for some bizarre reason you just miss out a word? Happens when I talk as well sometimes. Quite embarrassing. Just as well no one's watching. After he had raised his arm and struck the wolf with such a blow on his head that he fell down dead, and then they got the knives and scissors and cut his body open and drew the little fellow forth. "Ah," said the father, "what sorrow we have gone through for thy sake." "Yes, father, I have gone about the world a great deal." Well, he hasn't really. He spent half the time inside an animal's stomach. But okay. "Thank heavens, I breathe fresh air again." "Where hast thou been then?" "Ah, father, I have been in a mouse's hole, in a cow's stomach, and then in a wolf's. Now I will stay with you, and we will not sell thee again. No, not for all the riches and all the world," said his parents, and they embraced and kissed their dear child, Tom Thumb. And he probably tasted disgusting because he was full of stomach acid. But we'll ignore that. They gave him to eat and drink. And had some new clothes made for him, for his own had been spoiled on his journey, I bet. And then the guys that they'd sold Tom Thumb came and killed him for ripping them off. That didn't actually happen. I just added that to the end. So the next story is Thumb Journeyman, which I'm guessing is a sequel to this. It might not be actually, but I would guess it's the sequel to the first Tom Thumb. Wasn't that a riveting story about people who wish for a child the size of a thumb, gets sold and then eaten by a cow, and then a wolf somehow survives that, gets home. It's a story that anybody can relate to, really. Fantastic. So how long does this one go on for then? Not that long. We have been streaming for half an hour. You don't need to know that. So, here we go with the second of the Tom Thumb saga. Tom Thumb Journeyman. I'm guessing all that adventuring he did made him level up to Journeyman. That's what you do, like you just spam the jump button so that it raises your athletics, and then like you gain level. You level up, become Journeyman. My attempts to be funny are probably the worst thing about these streams. Anyway, A certain tailor, it's either peasants or tailors, isn't it? Do these Grimm brothers never have any original ideas? So if it's not a peasant, it's a tailor or a merchant. Anyway, a certain tailor and his son, who happened to be small, we know that, had no bigger than a thumb, and on his account he was always called Tom Thumb. That sounded like it was supposed to rhyme there, didn't it? A certain tailor and his son, who happened to be small, oh no, that doesn't work, and no bigger than a thumb, and on his account he was called Tom Thumb. Doesn't really. He had, however, some courage in him, and said to his father, "Father, I must go out into the world." "That's right, my son," said the old man, and took a long darning needle, I don't know much about needles, and made a knob of sealing wax on it at the candle. "And there is a sword for thee to take with thee on thy way." I'm guessing he's a lot older now. Then the little tailor wanted to have one more meal with them, and hopped into the kitchen to see what his lady mother had cooked for the last time. It was, however, just dished up, and the dish stood on the hearth. Then he said, "Mother, what is there to eat today? 'Cause I'm too lazy to make it myself. I have to get my mum to look after me." Well, I suppose he is really small, isn't he? That's not fair. "See for thyself," said his mother. So Tom Thumb jumped onto the hearth and somehow didn't burn himself, and peeped into the dish. But as he stretched his neck in too far, the steam from the food caught hold of him and carried him up into the chimney. Fucking hell. How light is this bastard? He rode into the air on the steam for a while, until at length he sank down to the ground again. Now the little tailor was outside in the wide world, and he travelled about, and he went to a master in his craft, but the food was not good enough for him. "Mistress, if you give us no better food," said Tom Thumb, "I will go away and early tomorrow morning I will write with chalk on the door of your house, 'Too many potatoes, too little meal.' Farewell, Potato King." I'm slightly confused by this story. So he's already out. So he's not saying this to the mother, is he? He's saying it to a different person. Why does he say Mr. Potato King then and not Miss or Mrs. Potato King? Queen. I don't know what the fuck's going on here. "What wouldst thou have forsooth, grasshopper?" said the mistress, and grew angry. And it kind of feels like, you know, when you've read a bit of a book, then you turn like the wrong page, and like you end up reading and you think, how did we get here? It just sort of jumps from being lifted up from the steam, and all of a sudden he's getting food from someone else's house. Or, I don't know, an inn or somewhere, restaurant, who knows? Who fucking knows? "What would thou forsooth, grasshopper?" said the mistress, and grew angry, and seized a dishcloth, and was just about to go strike him. But my little tailor crept nimbly under the thimble, peeped out from behind it, and put his tongue out at the mistress. Again, slightly confused by this. Okay, but whatever. Either I've missed something really obvious, or this feels like it's been badly edited, to be honest with you. "Ho ho, lady mistress," cried he, and thrust his head out, and when she began to strike him, he leapt down into the drawer. What drawer? You haven't established where he is. Unless I've just missed something. At last, however, she caught him and drove him out of the house. Right. The little tailor journeyed. So is he the tailor then? I thought he was a journeyman. I thought the father was the tailor. Is he also a tailor? Maybe tailor means something different from what I thought it was. I thought a tailor was someone who does like clothes and shit. Does it mean something else in like a historical context? Possibly. The little tailor journeyed on and came to a great forest, and there he fell in with a band of robbers, as you do, who had designed to steal the king's treasure. Wonder if it was Robin Hood. When they saw the little tailor, they thought, a little fellow like that can creep through a keyhole and serve as a picklock to us. "Hollo," cried one of them, "thou'st giant Goliath, wilt thou go treasure clambering with us? Thou canst slip thyself in throw out the money. See, this old-fashioned talk really trips me up. Tom Thumb reflected a while, and at length he said yes, and went with them to the treasure chamber. Right. It's just speeding along at a pace. I wish I could speak. Then he looked at the door above and below to see if there was any crack in it, because presumably they've gone to the castle by now. But it doesn't really establish any of this travelling stuff, but okay. It was not long before he espied one of which was broad enough to let him in. He was therefore about to get in at once, but one of the two sentries who stood before the door observed him, and said to the other, "What an ugly spider, creeping in there! I will kill it." "Let the poor creature alone," said the other. "It has done thee no harm." Then Tom Thumb got safely through the crevice into the treasure chamber, opened the window beneath. It's not a very well designed treasure chamber, but okay. Which the robbers were standing in, I think it should say, and threw out to them one thaler after another. When the little tailor was in full swing of his work, he heard the king coming to inspect his treasure chamber, and crept hastily into a hiding place. The king noticed several solid thalers were missing, but could not conceive who could have stolen them, for locks and bolts were in good condition, and all seemed to be well guarded. Then he went away again, and said to the sentries, "Be on the watch, someone is after my money." When therefore Tom Thumb recommenced his labours, they heard the money moving, and a sound of clink, clink, clink. They ran swiftly in to seize the thief, but the little tailor, who heard them coming, was still swifter, and leapt into a corner and covered himself with a thaler, so that nothing could be seen of him. And at the same time he mocked the sentries and cried, "I am here." That seems really dumb. But we've already established from the previous story that he's not the brightest. I mean, I suppose he's only got like a tiny little brain, hasn't he? because he's so small. The sentries run thither, but as, mind you, having a normal sized head as I have doesn't necessarily mean that you have a decent brain, as evidenced by me. But anyway, the sentries ran thither, but as they got there, he had already hopped into another corner under a thaler and was crying, "Ho ho, here I am." The watchman sprang there in haste, but Tom Thumb had long ago got to the third corner and was crying, "Ho ho, here I am." And thus he made fools of them, and drove them so long round about the treasure chamber that they were weary, and went away. Idiots. Then, by degrees, he threw all the thalers out, dispatching the last with all his might, then hopped nimbly upon it, and flew down with it through the window. The robbers paid him great compliments. "Thou art a valiant hero," they said. "Wilt thou be our captain?" Tom Thumb, however, declined, and said he wanted to see the world first. They now divided the booty. But the Little Tailor only asked for a creaser, no idea what that is, because he could not carry more. I'm guessing it's like a measurement of currency. Creaser. Anyway, then he once more buckled on his sword, bade the robbers goodbye, and took to the road. Well, it's actually describing some actual travelling. Amazing. First he went to work with some masters, but he had no liking for them, and at last he hired himself as a manservant in an inn. The maids, however, could not endure him. I'm not bloody surprised, he sounds like a prick. A prick. I just got it because he's so small. For he saw all that they did secretly, without their seeing him. Yeah, I'm guessing some things which are not meant for child's ears. Being so small, with maids and stuff. I'll let your imagination work it out. And he told them, and they told, and he told their masters and the mistresses what they had taken off the plates. Oh, okay. My mind was going somewhere completely different. Right. What they had taken off the plates and carried away out of the cellar for themselves. Nothing to do with him being a pervert. I do apologise. I mean, if you were that small, would you not try? Soon afterwards, when one of the maids was mowing in the garden and saw Tom Thumb jumping about and creeping up and down the plains, she mowed him up quickly with the grass. That's just murder though, isn't it? Tied all in a great cloth and securely threw it to the cows. God, he's going to end up in a cow again. Now amongst them there was a great black one who swallowed him down with... Oh right, they're talking about the cows, not the maids. I knew that. Who swallowed him down without hurting him. Down below, however, it pleased him ill, for it was quite dark. No shit. Well, I suppose there probably would be shit in the stomach. Actually, no, it would be in the intestines, wouldn't it? Forget my mumbling. Neither was any candle burning. When the cow was being milked, he cried, "Strip, strap, strut. Will the pail soon be full?" What a weird thing to say. But the noise of the milking prevented his being understood. After this, the master of the house came unto the cow brewer and said, That cow shall be killed tomorrow. Fuck's sake, another innocent cow killed because of this stupid prick. Look, you've got cows and you've got been outside the cow. Just stay outside the cow. Stop being eaten by cows, you idiot. How can the same stupid thing happen twice? Then Tom Thumb was so alarmed that he cried out in a clear voice, Let me out first, for I am shut up inside her. The master heard that quite well, but did not know from whence the voice came. Where art thou? He asked. In the black one, he answered Tom Thumb. But the master did not understand what he meant, and went out. Went out where? Okay. Next morning, the cow was killed. Happily, that's a matter of opinion. I'd rather you just stay in there and fucking die, the little prick. Happily, Tom Thumb did not meet with one blow at the cutting and chopping. He got among the sausage meat, and when the butcher came in and began his work, he cried out with all his might, Don't chop too deep, don't chop too deep. I am amongst it. No one heard this because of the noise of the chopping knife. Now poor Tom Thumb was in trouble, but trouble sharpens the wits, and he sprang out. I'm not so sure about that. Often when I'm in trouble, I sort of get nervous and stumble and stutter and shit. But that's just me, I suppose. And he sprang out so adorantly between the blows that none of them could touch him, and he escaped with a whole skin. Whose skin? I assume his own skin. Or maybe it means the skin of the sausage. Possibly. But still he could not turn the page. Get away. There was nothing for it but to let himself be thrust into a black pudding, as you do, with the bits of bacon. His quarters there were rather confined, and besides that, he was hung up in the chimney to be smoked, and there time did hang terribly heavy on his hands. At length in the winter he was taken down again, somehow survived. As the black pudding had been set before a guest, when the hostess was cutting it in slices, he took care not to stretch out his head too far, lest a bit of it should be cut off. At last he saw his opportunity to clear a passage for himself and jumped out. There are many aspects of this story which make me think that it's not particularly realistic. I mean, I know we're dealing with a human being the size of a thumb. Did he sustain himself on the black pudding meat? And if so, why didn't he just eat himself out? Why did he just stay in the black pudding for presumably quite a while? And how did he breathe? Okay, right. The little tailor, however, would not stay any longer in a house where he fared so ill. So at once he set out on his journey again. But his liberty did not last long. In the open country he met with a fox who snapped him up in a fit of absence. "Hollo, Mr. Fox," cried the little tailor. "It is I who am stuck in your throat. Set me at liberty again." "Thou'st art right," answered the fox. "Thou'st art next to nothing for me, but if thou wilt promise me the fowls in thy father's yard, and I will let thee go." "With all my heart," replied Tom Thumb. "Thou shalt have all the cocks and hens that I promised thee." Then the fox let him go, and himself carried him home. When the father once more saw his dear son, he willingly gave the fox all his fowls which he had. Yeah, I doubt it. For this I likewise bring thee a handsome bit of money, said Tom Thumb, and gave his father the carusium which he earned on his travels. But why did the fox get the poor chickens to eat? Oh, you goose, your father would surely love his child far more than the fowls in the yard. Right. Lot of sentient animals, a lot of really stupid people, a lot of being eaten by animals. Makes me wonder, does Tom Thumb just have the ability to talk to animals like Dr. Dolittle? Because if so, why didn't he just say to the cows? Or maybe the cows are supposed to be really stupid, which actually isn't entirely true. There is some evidence to believe that cows are actually fairly intelligent creatures. But it's just a fairy tale, so who gives a fuck? And my tea has gone really cold. That's annoying. This is quality streaming right here. Watching a man drink a cold cup of mint tea. This is what people want to tune into. My arm is shaking just from holding the book for so long. So we'll read one more. This is going to be a very short one. Yeah, my arm is really... So I'm just going to leave the book down here actually. Right. This one is called Sweet Porridge. Don't suppose it's got anything to do with the 1970s BBC Porridge with Ronnie Barker. I do like a bit of Porridge. It's one of my favourite sitcoms. Not so fond of actual porridge though. I like it now and then, but only so much of it I can eat. But anyway, this is a short little story called Sweet Porridge. There was a poor but good... There was a poor but good little girl who lived alone with her mother, and they had no longer had anything to eat. So the child went into the forest, and there an aged woman, I suppose it doesn't matter, met her who was aware of her sorrow, and presented her with a little pot. And she took it home to her mother and got incredibly high, and dreamed up like these bizarre stories. Which when she said, "Cook, little pot, cook," would cook good sweet porridge, and when she said, "Stop, little pot," it ceased to cook. It's a magical pot. Maybe she did actually get like pot that she smoked. The girl took the pot home to her mother, and now they were freed from their poverty and hunger, and ate sweet porridge as often as they chose. I can read. Once on a time when the girl had gone out, her mother said, "Cook, little pot, cook," and it did cook, and she ate till she was satisfied. And then she wanted the pot to stop cooking, but did not know the word. Oh, you stupid bugger. So it went on cooking, and the porridge rose over the edge. And still it cooked on until the kitchen and the whole house were full. And then the next house, and then the whole street, just as if it wanted to satisfy the hunger of the whole world. And there was the greatest distress, but no one knew how to stop it. What happened to the little girl? At last, when only one single house remained, The child came home and just said, "Stop, little pot," and it stopped and gave up cooking, and whoever wished it to return to the town had to eat his way back. So basically, magical pot that just produces porridge out of thin air, filled up a whole house, then a whole street. It seemed like it was going to fill up the whole world, but it didn't. And then the little girl came back wherever she went to, it doesn't say where, and stopped the little pot. And that's your story. Fantastic. The next story is quite a long one, so I think I'll leave it there for now. And that has been the third part of me reading stories from Brothers Grimm's Complete Fairy Tales. And yeah, don't think anyone's particularly interested in these storytime streams, so I think this will probably be the last one. But it's not the end of my stream. Well, it is the end of this stream, but not the end of me streaming, because after this I'm going to take a little break, and then I'm going to come back and play a little bit of don't know, I still haven't decided actually. It's either going to play Civ 5 or Majora's Mask. I was hoping someone might show up and I could ask them what they would want me to play, but so far I don't think anyone showed up, which is typical of my streams. So yeah, I think I'll just give up the whole story time streams, because it was just an idea I had to have a little bit of fun reading some stupid public domain stories and have a bit of a laugh with people, but I don't think it's going to be popular. So, not that I desire to be really popular or anything, but just be nice if there was a couple of people just mess about and take the piss. But yeah, it was an experiment. I've tried it 4 times now, to no avail. So that is the end of Storytime with Swifter. Thank you very much for listening. If you did, I doubt anyone will, but whatever. And yeah. Right. Guess I should close down the stream now. Adios. Adios.